in exile. To live in exile, a bitter juxtaposition, practically an oxymoron. My children speak different languages, and even I, between sleep and wakefulness, hear separate languages inside my head. Exile, spilled wine on the silver tray around the glasses left empty. Exile, cage without bars, protected by the impassable distance of our anguish. Exile, visions of astonishing women marred by news of women dying. I experience exile like a gloomy carnival, awkwardly preparing myself for the mysterious classic tragedy to die in exile, to breathe the last breath far away, forever absent from the grace of my home. I've been reading from Julio Monteiro Martins' book, The Grace of My Home. So this is why I selected this poem to read in the beginning, for it has the expression, the grace of my home. And Julio himself has said that he found his poem, this particular poem of his, to be a powerful one, because this talks about the exile that he was in, because he had to leave his homeland Brazil and go to Italy. This is a lovely book that we've been reading for the last few days, The Grace of My Home, Julio Monteiro Martins. The poems, each poem speak to us in a language that is very close to our heart. What do you think, Barid?
Yes, I have read Grace of My Home, as you have. But, I find that, there are certain bursts of inspiration that touches us. And they come in once in a while between the poems. And I feel that, most of the poems have a sense of lament in them. Probably because of his background, because he had to be exiled, after being, oppressed in Brazil. Mm-hmm. But, one of the poems that I found, I'd like to read it. Mm-hmm. It's called Windows.
Okay.
It goes like this. Mm-hmm. A poet has written that poetry and windows don't get along together. Mm-hmm. Perhaps he was right. Windows are a subject that is too poetical. Too often they serve as tired cliches. Here's one. The gaze is the window of the soul. Another. This treasure chest is a window to the past. And this is the last stanza that really strikes me as very significant. In fact, one can scarcely make poetry in this way. It's clear that there are no windows that open into the soul or doors that swing open into the past. Now see, this particular poem borders on the sense that has been given to the poetic literature by John Donne, because the last stanza does have a metaphysical element in it. He's not speaking of God, but he is speaking of infinity, which, as a matter of fact, physics has not been able to define or solve. So I thought that, I have read all these poems, but this one sort of stood out for me, actually.
Since you speak of standing out for you, let me read what stood out for me. This is the first poem of the book, A Poetic Journey, where he uses poetry as a personification. The poetic device he uses here is personification, and poetry is a lady. And how beautifully the poem builds as it goes on. Poetry dressed herself with great care for Sunday's big festival, which would be held a few steps from her home. With the address in hand, she began walking, peaceful and determined, secure in her stylish outfit, tone on tone in pastel shades. It was raining, however, and the cars speeding past through the puddles splattered dirty water on the pretty ironed blouse, while the mud on the sidewalk soiled the hem of her pants. So this is how the poem goes, and when she actually ends her journey, she reaches somewhere, and this I have to tell you that all the poems here end in a beautiful way, ends in a way where you feel that there is some kind of transcendence. Here you see, I'll get a little plate from you. She goes somewhere and there someone gives her a plate of food to eat. She is hungry, she feels famished from inside, and then I'll get a little plate for you, another for the dog, and then go. It's already late. I have to close. I am very tired. And here you see, everyone has gone. It's like it's going on, and then in the end, in the mirror, I recall I seem quite respectable. Poetry exhausted, muttered to herself while stretching out a hand to accept the little plate with the leftover cake. I think it was striking, this imagery of poetry having a cake, which is a leftover cake, how it resonated with us who write poems, and how we think that poetry doesn't get the attention or whatever it deserves. So we as the writers of poems, I think it is important that we share this poem with others. What do you think?
You see, Amanita, as you read and I was going through all the stanzas, I mean very quickly, flittingly rather, and you know, I read the poem before. This poem has a resemblance to some of the poems of Walter de la Mare. And to a degree, it also resembles to the literature narrative of one of India's greatest authors, Vibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay. That's because, you know, it brings out the very minute details of human life and human behavior, plus the surroundings, in a very profound manner, which gives us a deep insight into the heart and soul of the not just the poem, but the poet himself. Because once again, as I felt and as I said earlier to you, that this poem too has an element of lament in it. And you know, when you lament, you start recalling, and when you recall, then the finest particles of that recall come to your mind and you start writing. And I felt that, you know, this definitely has that, you know, a flavor which, as you have rightly said, it's kind of a transcendenting experience when you read this poem.
Yes,
right.
Yeah. The beginning, it kind of arrests your attention, and then how the poems end. It's like completely a transporting experience.
Right.
And this book is wonderfully printed by Antonym,
Yes.
the Antonym Publishing House. I think this book, with the look, it will attract the attention of the readers.
Quite
and
true.
once he opens it, it is going to be a very arresting experience.
I'll tell you something, because you know, when I hold this book in my hand and when I open it, and when I see the quality of the printing and the pages, you know,
Yes.
I've come across many foreign books, but in fact, it's as good as them.
Yeah.
You know?
Actually, yes.
So, you
I
know,
agree.
coming back to the book, There is another poem I'd like to read.
Oh, yeah.
Some people might find it as a knee-jerk reaction of the poet to life. But this is amazingly true when we really look into our own lives at ground zero where we live. If we take ourselves away from poetry, imagination, imagery, and all these things, when you come to ground zero, the epicenter of our very existence, these are the things that happen. And this is a poem that written about parents and their children. It goes like this. It's called The Children. There's a total atmosphere of conspiracy. Maria forgot to take the pill. Pill as in a birth control pill. Giovanni's condom broke. And Patrizia got confused about the dates on the calendar. Did you come in me, Guglielmo? You were really irresponsible. Now, you see, when you read this paragraph, for the orthodox listener or the conservative listener, it could be a matter of, it could be scandalous reading for them. But what he says here is absolutely the reality because, like the Nobel laureate Foss, Julio writes, Julio says what can't be said. And then the next stanza, so Diego, Emilius, Cesare, Costanza, the children conspire to be born. Now see the focus on conspire.
Wow, yes.
Because it is an accidental birth.
Right.
And then they try and come into forms of human beings to birth as human beings. Now, see, what is more interesting, the last stanza, which really appeals to me, Amanita. It says the invisible being makes a home in the heart of the misguided parents. From there, it emerges only to testify, happy and full of mischief, to the breathless acts of its own creation. Now, you see, this is actually a very, very insulated lesson that we derive out of this stanza because that is exactly what we face vis-a-vis us as parents and the offsprings. At one point of time in the modern world or in the postmodern world, this alienation happens. And that's what I'm saying. He said something that people don't really say in poetry. So I thought, I'll share it with you.
Exactly what you said. I also feel that reading poems is a personal experience, and I personally look for things that resonate to me with the poem. What in my life is similar to what the poet writes. It is a conscious search often. And here in this poem, Elective Affinities, the first stanza.
Which page is this?
It is page 52. And the first stanza starts like this. So that my friends might love me more, perhaps I should stop writing about them or writing about anything. So this expression, so that my friends might love me more, I think a big part of my life, and I'm sure it's for other people too, it is also like how can our friends and how can people around love us more. So this remained with me, so that my friends might love me more. Okay, so what he can do and what he cannot do, it goes on like that. And the sardonic wit of the poet comes alive in these lines.
Yes.
Ah, my friends, my earthly treasure, what a privilege to have them always near and above and below and inside. My God, what a witty expression, and how sarcastically he is saying these things. I must guess their most hidden desires, their whims, their prejudices, so that warmed, reassured, their love may continually grow. And in the end, as we have rightly noted, both of us, how he ends the last stanza, how he ends the poem, so that they may love me more, these friends of mine, I would do anything, even what they would never dare ask. I will give them the maximum of every bit of my minimum. How satisfying and how pleased they will be. I think it's
Yeah, it's a very interesting poem, but I'd like to pick up one more stanza. Over and over again, as you read through the book, which is a very interesting read, there is a sense of loss because it is always the exile that is at the front of a screen, and most of his poems have been written on the basis of or as an afterthought of the loss or the repercussions in his life. And he is not at all ambiguous about it. He's very clear. Like he says that in the same poem that you read just now, that I simply have to abandon my native land, change my language, give up very young women, change my ideas about everything, resign myself to the free market, to things the way they are, quit drinking, smoking whatever, quit criticizing. Now you hear, quit criticizing. When he was in Brazil, most of his work, as you already know, had been critical of oppression, and quit criticizing. And he is there with a sense of fear that if I criticize again, can I write? Can I be the free man all over again? So it's very sarcastic in a way, quit criticizing, noteworthy people, once again, sleepless, and quit the pleasure of sex. Now, you see, this again he's on a foreign soil and in Italy, and these were the things he thinks a free man has the right to do. But he was not able to do these things when he was in Brazil. So you have actually read a very good poem here, and I'm glad that you liked it because not everybody would want to appreciate certain trends in the book. Amanita, elective affinities, obviously, it's part of the book called The Grace of My Home, which has been translated from Italian into English by Donald Stang and Helen Wickes. There are places where I have a very gut feeling that probably, there are portions, there are parts in this book that might have gotten lost in translation. That's how somehow I feel, because the order of the poems and the way they represent the order, there is a certain difference. And at the same time, the entire book has been written in free verse. I mean, there is no meter. It's unmetered. And if there is any meter, then obviously it's inadvertent. I mean, he hasn't consciously used the meters. That's what I somehow feel. So,
That's a very important observation, that it is a free verse and the meters are not there.
I meant, even if there are meters, then, he's done it unconsciously, inadvertently. They just crept into the story.
Okay.
As you said that, you wanted to talk about storytelling.
Yes, storytelling, yes. So I'm going to read a poem which will completely resonate with us Indians, as Indians. It is titled Eclipsing the Taj Mahal.
Okay.
So I think all the poets in the world, whoever has seen or read about Taj Mahal has attempted to write about it, if not almost, many. So eclipsing the Taj Mahal, it starts like this. As you rightly pointed out, there is a storytelling element in most of his poems. And here, while he talks about Taj Mahal and Shah Jahan and their love story, he ends the poem in a totally different note, and that's what makes the poem so interesting. So that such a love might not be forgotten, the Prince Shah Jahan ordered the most beautiful palace to be built and bestowed on it the name of his dead love, Mumtaz Mahal. After many years, the prince was dying, and admiring the white marble, mistook it perhaps for the actual skin of his dead love. It goes on like this. And then in the end, he said, "If I could command marble, slaves, years, I still would not build the Taj Mahal. I would remain silent as now, watching the growth of nothingness, seeing myself dissolve like a pat of butter in the center of the pan." I think this is a beautiful imagery. Again, this
Yes.
imagery of the butter in the center of the pan. Where is Taj Mahal and where is this? How he brings his reader to the immediate world, from the world of beauty. I would not erect the Taj Mahal, nor would I even carve on a tree the name of my dead loved one. I have never done so. To protect them from the inescapable crater-like feeling left by love. Here he comes to the truth of love as he has perceived it. To protect them from the inescapable crater-like feeling left by love, its intangible imprint. To protect those who do not love from viewing the crater, the vertigo of seeing all the way to the very bottom. This is,
Yes, it's an extraordinary poem. Excuse me. But you know what I also liked in one of the stanzas, it's the second one. You know, there are times in our lives we have loved and we have been loved back, and we have been rejected also. And there is also a question of unrequited love being the finest form of love. Now, in the second stanza, it says that after many years, the prince was dying, and admiring the white marble, mistook it, perhaps, for the actual skin of his dead love, which you have already read. Now, you know, there's another stanza that really I felt was, it spears your heart. Or perhaps he meant to say something much simpler, that his love was not love, but love itself. Now here he is defining love as a philosophy, not as just a remembrance or as a monument to love. I mean, it cannot be, deified. Love cannot be deified. So he says that, a love, but love itself. I mean, I thought that, I just kind of share this, my personal thought with this. So,
as we were talking about the language that he has used here, it's the everyday kind of language, and I found this poem, Unexpected Paradigms, so interesting because so often we see people around us bringing up words, especially in poetry or in songs, bringing in words that do not make sense at all, and they are so funny. And I was wondering, this person who was in exile in Italy, who was kind of going through experiences that are not particularly easy, how he kept his humor intact, and how he notes that bizarre words get into the creations.
right.
And he writes in this stanza, "Welcome to the kingdom of unexpected paradigms. Please make yourself at home. Ass and metaphysics." How funny is that? Nice and spread out on these muddied, chaste sheets. you can expect to receive rocks thrown and masked frenzies, and they will take from you hypothalami and harpoons while supplies last in the utter season of pain. And in the end, he writes, the rogue nouns of the short-circuited century are unexpected stones, are pure mental mud disguised as rhetorical diamonds.
Yes, I mean, I know. You are absolutely right because, as a poet, I mean, he's not got into any cumbersome, complex structures, but he's kind of, he's speaking to you as if
Yes.
he's sitting next to you
Right.
as a friend and telling you stories. Because there is one poem, it's called Cactus Flower. Now, you see, I mean, this is so everyday, and yet it's so poetic. It says, indoor spaces always precarious, provisional, walls are expensive. For the poor poet, unwelcome to landlords, rejected by walls, the outdoors remains camping out. About my life in the great outdoors, I'll tell you one story for free as always. Now, you see, it, I mean, as if I feel it could have been my story, it could have been your story, and
Exactly.
somebody sitting
Yes.
next to you and telling you these stories. And this is what makes the book what it is today.
Yes.
And probably that's one of the reasons why we are discussing this.
Yes. That is that. It speaks to us. It speaks to us in a way a friend speaks to us.
One thing, actually, if I hold this book, The Grace of My Home, it has a very cozy feeling. I mean, I'd like to read this book on a rainy day, snug under my blanket with a little bit of chill in the air,
Yes.
with a cup of coffee next to me,
Yeah.
and that is what I think Antonym has really, created. It's
Right.
not just publishing a book.
Yes.
It creates an atmosphere for you
Yes.
to read it.
Right.
The fonts, the cover, the illustrations, the graphic design, the jackets. That's a
Yes.
cozy feeling that I get.
Exactly. It's not just a book. It is an experience.
Yes.
We are going to.
There's
cherish.
one more thing I would like to tell you. It's my own personal feeling. I don't know how you look at it. If you ask me that, Barid, what about the entire book? How do you feel? I said, look, I mean, there are not all poems I have liked. There are poems I thought were naive. But then again, I do have that feeling in the back of my mind that there is a high probability of some of the poems that I do not like or that are, of lesser importance to me might have got lost in translation.
While you say that, yes, it might be a possibility, but we do not know since we do not know the language. But I have a feeling that even for the poems you think are not poetic enough are going to resonate with many people because they directly speak to them, and the topics the poems touch, love, longing, exile. I think it's so universal. I think all of us go through these experiences, feelings in one way or the other. That is exactly why we should be very grateful that
Yes.
we got this book to read.
I think, Amanita, if you speak more, then there's going to be an overdose of speaking, So, Amanita, I mean, say something about yourself.
I've been writing poetry for quite a long time. I have 2 books to my credit. I practice mental health, and I'm happy that I am into poetry. What about you, Barid Baran?
Well, you see, I started writing as a writer. I was a journalist for 33 years in Delhi, but I kept on writing. And my first piece of poem was in 1971 on Bangladesh War. And of course, now my passion is poetry. And that's probably the reason why I'm reading this book. Thanks, Amanita. It was great listening to you.
Thanks, Barid Baran. It was a wonderful experience for both of us, not just reading but also sharing
because-
our thoughts
right,
on this.
Right.